Peace and blessings, y'all. We are live.
Hey
I have,
everybody.
as y'all may or may not know, my name is Zayne Spirits, and I'm here with the lovely, amazing Lori Ivey.
That's a beautiful intro.
Well, this is streaming to both of our pages, so I'm pretty sure we'll get a mix, between your people and my people. So I think it'd
Yes.
be good for us to do an introduction. Would you like to start?
Yeah, I would. And I was feeling a pull to burn a little sage here before we get started. So I brought it in the room with me just to like get that yummy clearing and just, I love the
Yes.
smell. It's so clearing. And I also feel like sometimes this is an invocation to invite spirits in and allow those to leave. So we'll just address the room so that we're in alignment with where we're supposed to be as always. And
Yes.
yeah, thanks for saying. My name is Lori Ivey, for those of you who aren't familiar with me. And I have a pretty large social media platform. We've created this beautiful community of powerful, strong spiritual warriors here on earth. And I'm a medical intuitive channel, a psychic clairvoyant medium, and I work with people all over the world. Zane, you and I have done events together, which people love, and I tell me that people are asking when we're going to do another one. So I'm sure we'll be getting that going pretty soon. And yeah, I love connecting on the online space because we get to reach such a beautiful audience and get to share the other side of healing, which is our natural innate abilities in our DNA. And I love talking about that. And I love talking about the emotional space of being a human and our emotional intelligence, because I feel like when we have a good, deep understanding of that, that activates that crystalline DNA, and then we get connected with our dormant abilities. So the two go hand in hand, and they're just my favorite topics.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I love it. Of course, I love everything that you are. And thank you so much for blessing this and blessing me and everybody else and doing this live with me and just being present with these topics that I feel like are so important to our collective. Like a lot of the conversation is around how can I integrate me as a spirit into this human experience in a way that is healthy, and that goes a lot into our communication and our inner dialogues and our boundaries, and where is the ego taking place in all of this. So I love that we're going to talk about a lot of this during today's live. And for any of y'all who would like an introduction to me, my name is Zane Spirit. I'm the creator of SoulDriveGlobal.com. I work in the ancestral magic and medicine of all things, and I create products. I do mediumship, medical mediumship, as well as ancestral energy healing. Also, a Reiki teacher, and so I work in a lot of the energetic realms of things, much like Lori does. And like she said, we work great together. I love how all of y'all are asking about when are we going to have another event, and soon. Thank you guys for being patient with us taking our breaks and recalibrating the things that we need in our own lives. Like we're human too. We're having this human experience too. So it's important that we're in a space to hold space for you all. Like that doesn't happen without us being in a good space ourselves. So just being patient with us, and thank y'all for letting us know that the desire to see us in these spaces and to hold spaces there, because that certainly gets me fired up for sure.
Yeah. Well, the events are so powerful, right? It's like
Yeah.
we put the message out, and then who's supposed to come into the room comes into the room, and we just light it up as a collective, and we channel for people. We really get in the heart space. We create a safe, sacred container, and it's just been a beautiful experience to see when we have the ability to be open to receive the types of things that we can accomplish. And We channel manifestations for people. We bring in knowledge of their future lives. And every single person's like, oh my gosh, that's what I'm already thinking about. That's what I'm already working on. And it's so beautiful to be able to clear the ancestral lineages too. Like I took like 8 months off from working, and since I've started back, my mediumship has really taken off. So I've been channeling a lot of past loved ones, pets, humans. And what I've noticed is that they're coming in to clear out whatever healing is needed from the family dynamics. And it's really
Yeah.
beautiful. They also transition from the body, we as humans do. And what I've seen is that there's still so much healing that happens on the other side of the veil for them also, right? It
Yes.
doesn't just take place in this experience in the body. And that's been one of the most fascinating things to me is someone's great, great, great grandmother comes in and it's like, hey, this is what we've experienced. And I'm here to heal that. And they can feel the body clear the energy in the body directly when that takes place. So
Yes.
it's beautiful. You know how it is for us as open channels to use our vessel and our experience to help clear out all these timelines and elevate the mind space so that we can integrate our higher selves and learn how to be multidimensional while being a human. And that transition isn't always easy. You know, that's one of the things we talk about in our events is we open people up, but we also counsel them on the awakening process, because once we activate that dormant DNA, the entire experience starts to morph itself into this higher
Yeah.
vibration. And it's a wild ride, but it's
Mhm.
something that I feel so fortunate, number one, to even incarnate as a human, and then number two, to be able to exercise my multidimensional abilities. So, and we all have that capability, I feel, and that's what we do is we activate the dormant DNA so that we can get people into those appropriate timelines, and it's absolutely amazing.
Yes, yes. I love that. And I love how we're in this space of recognizing, we're not alone in this at
Right.
all. And there was a good portion of the beginning of my journey where I was like, am I just the only one that is I'm feeling crazy over here.
Yeah.
Like I'm seeing things, I'm hearing things, I'm going through everything. And I think too that we discredit how important it is, like when we do shift into that new timeline or that higher frequency, we have to let so much go
So
in the
much.
process of that. Like anything that I have abused in my life, like whether that be substance or, relationships or just like looking for validation in other places, family, codependency, any type of codependency is going to be challenged,
Right.
and you have to make room for the
Yes.
transition. Like, and I tell people it's like a plane, like your blessings are in this plane and like your new life is in this plane and it's coming and your life is the runway. But if you've got all this clutter, all these buildings, all of these other things that are just foundational that are no longer going to support what new is coming into your life, your plane has nowhere to land. And so people are like, why isn't it coming? Why isn't it coming? I'm like, you got to make room.
Yeah.
But it's not always that you're never going to get your blessing, because what is for you will always be for you,
That's
right?
right.
So it's like, but eventually your plane is going to crash. It's going to run out of gas and it's going to crash into your life at the expense of something that you refused to let go of previously. So like you're like, why is this building on fire in my life? Like, why is my 10-year relationship is gone? And it's like spirit is like, will you look in the plane? Will you look in the plane? Will you look
Yeah.
to see what has been delivered into your life? Because it's something so much greater every single time. Every time I'm like holding on for dear life for something in my life, spirit is like, something greater is on the other side. Like, why the resistance? And so a lot of the ego, I feel like, just operates in that resistance and
Oh,
that
totally.
codependency or wanting things to stay the same because it's sure of what that's going to be. But the moment that we enter into a higher version of ourselves, we have to let go of the doubt. We have to let go of these old thought patterns, these old forms and ways of being, to say, I'm ready for what comes next. Even though I know what's coming next, it's like you got to integrate it into the human experience. So it's like, but I don't know what's next.
Right.
It's a simultaneous thing, because people are like, I can prophesize about my life, and you probably know this too, like where spirit gives you downloads about your own life, and you're
Right.
like, but it's not here yet. It's not here yet.
Yes.
It's not here yet. And you're in this constant state of like, what is going on with that? And it requires us to be patient with ourselves, and understanding that sometimes we need to be in we need to recognize that we're in preparation for these things that we prophesize, or that we're
Absolutely.
always going to be ready for it when it comes.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to the plane analogy that you were talking about, it's also about looking at what baggage is on the plane,
Yeah.
right? Because like, what are you packing emotionally to drive that, to fly that plane? And yeah,
Hmm.
like when we activate and start going through the awakening and we start getting all these feels about things that we see and these visions that are coming, and like you say, it's a prep process to shed like old programming and learn to be patient. For me and my channel, because we're both clairaudient, right? So we hear verbal messages and have verbal conversations with the entities, spirits, guides, whatever we want to call them, the assistants. And I hear a lot of messages about things that are coming, and I oftentimes channel with people things that are coming into the future. So I feel like it gives us the platform to get ourselves ready for that, right?
Hmm.
Because everything comes to us when it's divinely laid out. Like we get the insight of things, but it's all, everything that we desire is already manifesting us. So it's
Yeah.
this interesting combination of letting go and trusting and knowing that all is divine, but also doing the inner work. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's really what it's all about, is to really get dialed in with the way that we're engaging in conversation, the way that we're talking about ourselves, the way that we're talking and treating other people. And that's when it goes into the topic that we were going to talk about today, is communication and the ego,
Hmm.
because the ego is our form of identity and there is no getting rid of it. We can be as neutral and androgynous as possible, but we live
Yeah.
on a planet that requires identity. So at some point in the space of androgyny, we have to step into this place of self-realization through being able to label and assess ourselves to explain to other people. And what I've been talking about, thinking about a lot, is the ego and
Hmm.
how dialed in we really are to recognize our patterns of thought and doing, because we get programmed from being in the womb, and then we come out of that nice little nuzzled place to come into a reality where we look at people who are older than us to guide us for years. Like, I think we're one of the only species on the planet that depends on our parents for as long as we do, right? Like most animals, they feed and then they go off into the wild and do their own thing. So there's a lot of programming that happens in those childhood years. And
Hmm.
oftentimes it's not very conscious, and it's the passed down generational stuff that isn't always healthy. So taking a look at oneself to see what the dialogue is, and to recognize that if it isn't of a like empowerment high vibration, then perhaps there's a story that we've accepted as ourselves. And
Hmm.
that's where things get confusing, because if we haven't made the decisions about who we are or want to be or what we're working toward, then we're in someone else's story. And what happens
Hmm.
is that starts to create static in our ley lines, and we are unhealthy mentally, we're unhealthy physically, can't keep a job, can't keep a relationship. Like those type things start to set in without
Hmm.
realizing, like, wait, I'm not even identifying to my own ego. that this is a program that I've identified with somehow. So I like to
Yeah.
get in with myself and my friends and family and my clients, and we go deep into the physical, but I believe that going into the mental is really important because that's where we can become really liberated. And then
Mm.
literally, you know how powerful words are. When you can go in and activate through the word space, you can see
Yes.
someone just like
They're,
everything changes.
yeah. They connect the dots. Like
Yes.
like they start to see, oh, this is how this has influenced me here and here and here. I love how people I think I re-saw the quote, or it resurfaced recently, like childhood, the things that you experience in trauma in your childhood will also always surface in your relationships.
Right.
And I think that that's so important, because it's not like your reflections are not going to be outside of romantic partnerships, but that's like the closest to us. Like when we start getting romantic with people, the reflection is so much more intensified. I've noticed from my experience is that it's going to be a lot more intense compared to speaking with just a friend that I'm not, maybe not intimate in that way with. So there's definitely different levels of communication and realization that takes place in reflections as well as in self, because also there's a lot of our society who has refused to create separate identities outside of their partnership.
Right.
And I used to be one of them. Like I would
Yes.
literally adapt to my partner or
Mhm.
partners or whoever, and I would become, like, I would be outside of myself, becoming the things that they wanted or the things that they showcased. And that's such an unhealthy thing to do. And it just, when I came to that point in my life, I was like, wow, I have literally taken on so many identities from
Right.
everyone else, not even realizing, just seeking comfort or validation in these spaces.
Well, our intimate relationships are the closest thing that we experience to being a child with a parent. The only
Mm,
difference is that we're sharing our bodies physically. So
yeah.
naturally, because in relationships we get to express how we nurture, how they nurture, our attention, just all of these different things. So it's like it goes to the root of anything that we
Hmm.
subconsciously and consciously took on from the dysfunction from childhood. And so
Hmm.
it's like that's why I always say that I can do all the work myself and think I'm at this place, right? But then I
Yeah.
get into a relationship and then it's like, whoa, wait.
I need to practice.
Yes, I'm not as advanced as I thought I was. But the great thing is, though, is that when we're single or not in an intimate relationship with someone, that's when we get to really go inside and do our inner work. Like really
Yeah.
learn to love ourselves and to create our own sacred space of self-healing and our own sense of empowerment, so that when we get into relationships, it doesn't come codependent to where we
Yeah.
lose all identity and just like totally encompass the other person, because that's generally what happens when we're not nurtured and our voice isn't heard and encouraged as a child, that we
Yeah.
don't even know what to do when we get in a relationship. And so we go into naturally wanting to please the other person all the time without actually speaking what we want and need for
Yeah.
ourselves in the relationship in return. And then we usually shame the other person because they're not living up to that standard, because we're looking for that other person to fulfill the void. And
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with that, because that's the whole reason why in our DNA we seek out partnership, because we want to feel fulfilled. But we want to feel fulfilled because when we're in a relationship and we are sharing in sexual, connection, emotional connection, it really offers the space for us to feel ourselves.
Mm.
Because like when you have sex with someone, you're feeling them, but that space is allowing you to feel yourself. You get to feel
Yeah.
your body. You get to feel your energy in a way that even if you touch yourself, it's not the same as having someone else's hands on, right? So it's the
Hmm.
same thing with the mind and the mental and emotional space is you get to share your love with someone. We get
Hmm.
to nurture and to feel that response back. So it's like, I feel like it's important to have the realization that we get to explore ourselves in a relationship. So it's taking a look at what type of self we're exploring. Is it
Yeah.
healthy? Is it codependent? Is it mutual? Is it one-sided? And
Hmm.
how much are we using our voice to really speak in an empowered way, not in a wounded way, where there's constantly projecting onto the other person, telling them you're not doing what I need, you're not fulfilling my needs. And it's like, well, you need to take a step back and look at yourself to see, are you fulfilling your own needs and
Yeah.
desires and wants? And I tell you, that really changes the dynamic of the ability to have a successful relationship. And so much of that is communication. It's like,
Yeah.
where's the ego at? What tone are you using? Are you mad all the time? Are you frustrated all the time? Are you projecting that at your partner as if it's them doing it? Because
Yeah.
we have the choice to be in a peaceful state or in a frustrated state. It just depends on the level of awareness one has about the self, right?
Right. Right. Very true. And I think it's important too. Like, I love how you said you're experiencing yourself when you're in that space in partnership. And spirit tells me a lot, like, the practice is in the partnership. Like,
Yes.
we get into hermit mode and we're by ourselves and we start establishing who we are. And we're like, ooh,
Right.
okay, I'm conscious of this. I'm taking off my baggage. To, hopefully everybody is coming into this place of, I need to take my baggage off before I enter into a new partnership, right? So I need to address my healing that needs to take place, but there's still going to be healing that happens in partnership. Some
Oh,
things you only
yes.
see. Some
Mhm.
things you only see in your divine reflection, and it brings a different level of awareness. But that awareness is not triggering when you are aware of yourself first.
Right.
So it's like, if your partner is bringing something to the surface, I mean, it can still be triggering, but it's like you're able to communicate it like, okay, now I'm triggered. Let me take a step back from the conversation. Let me not project. Let me gather my thoughts. Let me come back to you when I'm a little bit more centered on this discussion, so like we can create healthy dialogue
Right.
around the things that are triggering for us if that does come to surface, or we know when to vocalize, and even the partner is able to hold space oftentimes more than we give credit for, in those
Absolutely.
spaces that we need healing in. Like, there were so many partners that I did not allow them to give me, like, to hold space for me, because I felt like I was too seen. I'm
Yes.
like, you're seeing me, you're seeing you. I'm not in that space now, but it's really like hindsight looking back. I look at that and I say, wow, I was so afraid to be vulnerable and seen
Right.
in the heart space, like, just from caring so much and for not being accepted because I didn't accept myself, because I didn't have like healthy inner dialogue. So now coming into the practicing of partnership, uh it raises awareness to questions like, how can I hold space even when my partner is triggered?
Right.
What kind of space would I like to be held for me in this moment?
Exactly.
You
That's
know,
it.
how can I see myself in this person that is a reflection of me divinely, And so what has been your experience with identifying those triggers too, and like how to properly communicate that in divine union?
Well, the greatest thing is to listen how we engage individually. And
Mhm.
so I can only see myself as a reflection of my partner and my behaviors, right? Because
Yeah.
that's the ego. That's letting us know where the emotional space is at. And
Yeah.
I have I have a lot of experience with this. I've been in a lot of short-term relationships when I was younger, and I had such a deep vision of what the other person was going through, what they weren't seeing in themselves, and me sharing that. But I myself wasn't doing my own inner work. So the connection hadn't been made yet. And for some reason, I guess it's childhood stuff. Um, I was wounded to a place where I wasn't open to receive what the other person had to say about me, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, and now I'm at a place where it's like, why are we as a society, why are we so sensitively wounded that we get so triggered by sharing words that we can't just hold space and go, hey, like, I know that you see things and you feel things as you do, and I see and feel things as I do. So let's sit down and talk about that in a compassionate way. It's like we treat everyone else better than we treat the most intimate people in our lives. And it's like that level of dysfunction has, it blows me away as to why we do that. It's like you can go out and hold space with strangers anywhere or people that you don't know. And then you
Yeah.
come home and then it's like this frustrated, just like combative energy. And I like to talk a lot about conscious conflict resolution because it's like if we really want to be in an intimate partnership with someone and we don't want to have friction, being open to listen to what the other person has to say about how they feel is empowering, because when we shut the other person down, it's number one, not allowing them to share their feelings. We're creating a space that is unsafe for them to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes back to the childhood rejection. No, because I said so. Close your mouth, go to your room. And it trickles over into adulthood. And then we wonder why we have unsuccessful relationships. And this last year, and my current partner, my partnership now, we've dove like so much deeper into that because I finally have a
Mm-hmm.
partner who can hold space with me and my triggers, and I'm learning to hold space with him and his, so that we can
Mm-hmm.
both be grounded, because we realize that all of this tone and dismissive behavior, it's not healthy. It's not
Yeah.
authentic to who we actually are. And the last thing we ever want to do is to create a space where we don't like each other or have animosity when we share our bodies and our minds with each other. It's like the two need to merge, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's like, why get so upset and frustrated just because someone is feeling some type of way about something I did, right?
Yeah.
Or even
Yeah.
something I didn't do, but their mind assumed it. So why not say, let's talk about this. I love you. I'm here for you in a compassionate way, instead of getting so combative and
Mm-hmm.
yelling and frustrated. It's like we nitpick each other apart. Like, who took out the trash? Who didn't do this? Who broke a plate? Who broke a glass? I mean, it's just like all of these ridiculous things that I
Material.
feel. Yes, it's like, really, is that at the end of the day, is that what is really important to us? Like, so many of the arguments that we have with people is it's really not necessary. But I feel like for some reason the nervous system is so out of alignment that the
Mm-hmm.
body is taken over the consciousness rather than the consciousness taking over the body. And that's what I love about like Dr. Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton, a couple of the people that I've studied over the years, where they say like the genes control us until we learn to control the genes.
Yeah.
And then we can come into a much more grounded state. And it's a process, you know, like we have so many layers to our consciousness, and the body is always affecting it. But it's about looking at the mirror image and going, wow, you know, like I really am frustrated a lot. And I seem to get angry really easily. I snap at my kids and I yell at my partner, and I just feel so disgruntled all the time. It's like, what is that? Like taking a
Yeah.
look at that rather than letting that continue to run the experience is how to really
Mm-hmm.
get dialed into having healthier relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm always my family a lot with like road rage. I'll be like, why are you so mad?
Yes. It's like,
You
take
know,
a deep breath. Like,
breathe. Breathe. You stopped breathing like 30 seconds ago. Like,
yeah,
let's breathe.
yeah.
um it's important, like looking at being self-aware in the presence of other people.
Right.
To be able to say, I need my alone time. I need, like, to have boundaries is still important when we share with anybody, but especially in relationships too. Like, like you said, it's a lot to unpack when our body has a response that we've been in this program of consciously, like, continuously repeating things subconsciously.
Right.
And then also, like, the soul remembers, the consciousness remembers. So like you said, we were also being programmed in the womb, but we also have remembrance of previous soul
Right.
experiences in different bodies and different relationships. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately, with the previous partner that I had. Just I'm constantly going through my all connections that I've had, because I learned something new at every stage of my awareness. And so I was in this remembrance of where I was with this person, and we had a previous soul experience together that led us back and forth in this trauma response continuously. And at one point I thought it was a twin flame, but it was just karmic, a lot of karmic back and forth. I don't even want to get on twin flames today, but that's a lot to unpack. But in my opinion about that, has my experience with that has evolved over time. But now that I look at it, I'm like, wow, we were really just constantly triggering one another, and we're in
Yeah.
this loop, and it was to the point where there was no room to breathe, because you're always doing something, and I'm always triggered, and I'm always, whenever I'm triggered, it's triggering you, and we're just back and forth in this
Right.
thing. And I'm like, if I was now, and I took like 9-10 months, like, of just to myself, fasting, detoxing my body, resetting my nervous
Yes.
systems, like that's a big part of letting go of the previous baggage, is like detoxing the body, because the parasites in your body know what it takes. They know what it takes to get you off and
Yep.
get you heated in a situation that isn't even healthy, and to continue those unhealthy patterns. So I had to, like, detox from my food addictions and my emotional responses to things, and to check myself just all the time, constantly
Yes.
checking myself, why, checking my ego. And, like, I also want to discuss too how the ego is really villainized, but
Right.
that's a part of us that really needs love.
Yes.
like that part of us really needs love, and there's so much to unpack in the subconscious, not just from this programming of this soul experience, but what our ancestors went through and what we experienced in previous bodies. Like, there's a lot of things that go into this. So why not be more gentle to ourselves and other
Yes.
people who are unpacking this?
Yes.
And that's a big part of holding space, is saying, if I can be gentle with myself, patient with myself, loving with myself, I can offer the same to you, and it don't cost me anything. you know
Absolutely. It's totally free and it's right here at the fingertips anytime,
yeah.
right? It's like, I mean, it's like super interesting. And it's one of the things, like, I've watched and studied like psychology and sociology
Hmm.
all of my life. And I didn't really understand why at the time, but now I
Yeah.
know that I was wanting to understand the human experience more because I saw the dysfunction in my home as a child. And I knew that that is not what felt
Yeah.
right to me. And it's like so much in the spiritual community, there's so many sayings of like, let go of your ego and all of this, and it's like, no, like, don't let go of the ego, like, grab onto it, get in it,
Hold
right?
it.
It's like, yes, it's
Love
like,
on
it's
it.
like turn those pages of the book, because it really is a script that's been written out, the programming. And for me, like, let it go and do all of these things, and that's great, but we can't let something go that isn't actualized.
Yes.
So, right?
Hold
It's
on. Yes. Yes.
yes. And so that's why, a lot of the sayings and teachings in the spiritual community is beautiful in that it has the spectrum of getting us to actualize, to recognize, but there's a lot of gaslighting that comes into it too. And it's like, I think it gets used as an excuse sometimes to project one's unawareness still onto other people. And so for me, that's why I get outside of the dogma of it all. And it's like, at the end of the day, the greatest practice there is to pay attention to oneself. That's it. Like, you can read all the teachings and watch all the documentaries and go to all the seminars in the world, but unless you're ready to start paying attention to your behavior, then you're just constantly projecting on the other people still. So I mean,
the ego still wins in that space.
I know. and it's so beautiful because the unaware ego has a defense mechanism that creates walls and to not be able to receive. And so it's like, we can let those walls down so that we can be humbled to ourselves, right? It's like, why are we so afraid of our emotions and the memories of the past? And why are we so afraid of words and things like that? Like, I had a download like years ago, and I sat there and I was like, yeah, like, why am I afraid of my own mind? Like, why am I so afraid to go there within myself? And there was no reason. There was zero reason. Because if I like to go to the root, it's like, yeah, there's all these branches of reasons and excuses, but let's get down to the root. And if I sit with it, I realize that none of it actually makes any sense at all.
None of it was as scary as we made it,
Yes. It's like really not this big bad monster in there. And it's like this psychological loop. And the breath is such amazing. It's like other than sound tuning with our voice, like a sound bowl, we have a built-in healing machine. Those two things are so powerful in being able to heal the body and to ground it in times of feeling anxiety and panic attacks and those types of things. And it's because there isn't a relationship with the temple. And the body is our mechanism of being able to engage. Like, in the spiritual community, there's a lot of talk like, I'm not the body. And I'm like, no, I am fully my body in this lifetime. That's why I'm in it. And I embrace it and I love it. And I create this beautiful relationship. And a lot of people know, like, I used to use a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol. I used to be so attached to so many other substances, numbing my consciousness like I was under a spell. And then the spell got lifted. And then I realized that my body is everything, because it's how I get to have this experience as a human. And so, like you say, I started detoxing. Most people have no idea that they have parasites, and their minds aren't even open to even embracing that fact. And I work with a lot of people all over the world and we detox and go through different programs, because parasites are a real thing, and their intelligence seems superior than our own at times, and the way that they manipulate us, and we don't even realize it, right? It's trippy to me.
Lori, I know I know, but it is insane, the level of intelligence. Like, I think we've talked about my herpes patients, and literally the herpes, or any virus or any type of illness, a lot of it is it holds a parasitic energy. And so when I'm in the body and I'm pulling out illness, especially herpes will plague the entire body and disguise itself like it's something else. That is wild to me. I'm pulling, some people are only diagnosed with like vaginal herpes. I'm pulling it out of their heart space, out of their spine, out of their brains, their ears. What? Like, when spirit opened me up to that, because I was already privy to how intelligent, like, gut and intestinal, parasites were, did not know that this went into the depths of how we experience physical illness, because it's
Yes.
very much so an energy first.
Yes. It's mind blowing.
Like,
Yeah.
when I describe it to people, they are shook.
Yeah.
They are shook. And you can
It's a
hear them
real thing.
screaming. You
Yes.
can hear them screaming coming out of the body. Like, they will be
Fighting
laughing.
sometimes. They'll fight me when I
Yes.
pull parasites out of people sometimes. It's a trip.
Yeah.
It's
And
really amazing. Parasitic infiltration and mineral deficiency are the two rulers of toxicity in the body and in the emotional space. And
yeah.
we're not taught that on this planet. And that's for a reason, right? It's part of the control. So I always tell people, are like, Lori, how do I open my third eye? How do I start to be a channel? How do I become psychic? How do I do all this, all this? And I say, start with the relationship with your body.
Yeah.
Start detoxing. Start like diving into parasitic detoxing, mineral uptake. And I'm telling you, I have seen so much with myself. I started detoxing with fulvic humic minerals last year. I
Mm-hmm.
pulled out so many Morgellons from my feet, so much mucus in my bowel movements, like liver flukes. I mean, unbelievable. I feel them pop in my eye. I have a Spooky 2 cold plasma Rife machine, and I do a lot of frequencies, and I feel them popping in my eyes. I mean, it is unbelievable. And having a cat, cats have a type of parasite that gets into the brain when touching their feces. So it's like, if you have pets at home, you have dogs, you definitely need to detox, because and help them detox as well. Like the fulvic humic acid that I take,
Yeah.
pets, I've seen pets detox. I have seen autistic children who are 5 and 6 years old who haven't ever spoken start speaking, because we're talking
Yes.
about heavy metal toxicity. We're talking
Yeah.
about it in a for real way. And I always tell my clients, start off with some blood work. Go in and get your levels checked, see what heavy metals you have in your body, and let's go from there. And then
Yeah.
you really get a good idea of what's going on. And it's been phenomenal for me. Like, I woke
Yeah.
up without doing a parasitic detox and all that. So it wasn't necessary for my awakening. But
Yeah.
since then, and since I started channeling, my full drive has been to just constantly cleanse and give myself nutrients, because it allows me to feel the upgrades with much more ease, because I go through the
Yes.
galactic upgrades like you do. Like, for me, it's daily. And so it's
Yeah.
helped me so much to be able to remove pain from my body and get this, get the fungus and the heavy metals and the mucus and all of that out of the body, especially if someone is eating a lot of meat and raw fish and things like that, and you have pets. It's like, there has to be a time where we give the body a chance to detox itself. And I have seen so many people clear everything from psoriasis, eczema of the skin, to
Yeah.
vaginal issues, to mental issues. I mean, it has been so fascinating the last year, especially working with the fulvic humic acid. So it's like, I even bought a microscope and gloves, and I dig through my bowel movements and stuff and look at things under the microscope. You would not believe, but like, it's like,
Sometimes I can see them without the microscope. I'm
right.
like, I
Yeah.
already know
Yeah.
that's a big boy. Like,
Yeah. And yeah.
yeah.
And it's super empowering, because you really start to see, like, oh my gosh, like, people say they have sinus issues. Well, it's not really your sinuses. There's another root issue going on. And like
Yeah.
PCOS and fibromyalgia and just all of these things that the doctors will want to give
Sis.
medication for, but they're not actually treating what's happening. It's just masking the symptoms. And
Yeah.
so it's like, but it's really hard to get people to understand that, and to really take a look at their food addictions and the sugar. And it's, I mean, sugar is one of the mightiest drugs on this planet, and
Yeah.
it causes so much distortion. And so it's like, just like in my intimate relationships and my professional relationships, I hold space and I share my knowledge and my love and what comes through the channel. And it's up to each person to decide what they want to do with it. And it's
Yeah.
hard to break those cycles, but with the energy work we do too, like I've calibrated people to where they don't want to eat sugar anymore and
Yeah.
different things like that. So every person's path is different. But if I would say, like, if there's a medical condition going on and you just can't get rid of it, we have to start with the refrigerator and the cabinets and start
Yeah.
clearing out the cupboards and getting some new food in there, because food is our medicine and herbs are our high medicine. And
Yes.
it's so rewarding for me to see someone come back and it's like, Lori, I cleaned out my cabinets, I cleaned out my fridge, I'm so empowered, I went to the farmer's market, I got new food in my house. And but it's like the amount of people that actually do that instantly is so small. So it's about understanding each person's path and not judging it, and just
Yeah.
continuing to hold space and share the love, because it's not easy to let go of those addictions. But
Yeah.
once you're there, it's like, oh my gosh, I could have been doing this the whole time, right? That's how it was
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, yeah. You'll see people do a whole 180. Like these are not the same people. They don't
Right.
have the same temperament. They don't even
Mm-mm,
have the same personality
mm-mm.
because they have been hijacked. We've been hijacked
Yes.
by parasites. And like the vessel is the temple. Like the vessel is so holy and sacred. And like when you cultivate that deep relationship with the trillions of cells that are collectively make up this flesh and blood and bone, like that is so powerful. and
Yes.
and it and just and a lot of people are like, I love how you said, how can I open my third eye? Like they want to jump to the spiritual things, but I'm
Right.
like, you are already a spirit.
Yes.
Cultivate the physical right now to reflect like the physical, the mental and emotional. They're gonna automatically move into that space. And if you do have issues, or if you are hard on yourself on the physical, like I just can't get up to work out, or you know, I'm still eating unhealthy foods. I said, well, go to the altar and talk about it.
Right.
Go into meditation and talk about it. Start releasing that energy. Start letting it go, because they do mirror and reflect each other. And I tell people,
Absolutely.
if you're chaotic internally on a spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical level, it's going to reflect in your life in other areas. Like
Yes.
that chaos is always going to circle, or that peace is going to circle. So if you're at peace with yourself, like if in any type of way, like that's going to reflect in abundance with the people
Yes.
around you. You will interact more peacefully with people. And if you are graceful to yourself on this journey, because I have relapsed several
Well,
times
oh
out of that.
yes.
Like when I first started fasting, I was doing really heavy fast, and then I broke it. I had an emotional trigger. I broke it, and then I had to like go back into it. And sometimes like we can be our worst. Our inner dialogue can be the worst
Oh, the
when we're
worst.
when we're in that place of, oh, after all that work I did, I can't believe I messed it up. I
Right.
messed it up. And now I'm at the point where that's all right, Zane. You are
Yes.
still divine.
Yes.
Nothing about your divinity has changed. This journey is what it is. I make peace with that. And the moment I make peace with that, I stop beating myself up, and I stop
Yes.
beating other people up. Like,
Yes.
wake up, wake up, wake up. I can't believe you're not doing. No, I stopped doing that, because it's
Yes.
not my business to rush you in your journey.
Yes.
But we only rush people when we rush ourselves.
Yes. Absolutely. Because there's an unrealistic expectation that puts us in a place of feeling a lack of motivation to even do the things. Because
Yeah.
like I think we have like I like to think of it as like the hive mind. Like we
Yeah.
want to build the structure and serve the queen so much so that we lose sight of our ability to create our own pace.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's why I've come into a good understanding. Like I've eaten all kinds of different ways: raw, vegan, alkaline, vegan. Then I go into meat and back out. I mean, then I fast. I intermittent fast for like months at a time, and then I'll go back into eating more.
Yeah.
Like I really work with my body to do all these different things to see how things feel, because we don't know how things feel until we don't have it. And then
Yeah.
we step back into eating certain things. I've had so many of my clients were like, Lori, I was doing so good, and then I decided to have this sugary thing, and then I felt so awful for like 2 days. I'm like,
Yeah.
isn't it fascinating to see how the body responds to things that are toxic? And I work with people on addictions,
Mm-hmm.
alcohol, drugs, food. I mean, the whole thing. And I always
Yeah.
tell people, just hold space for yourself for each moment this day, and just be gentle. Like, if you're going to drink, even though you know you don't want to, bless that drink when you do it, because you're not there yet. And it's like, don't beat yourself up. If you don't want to eat meat, but you go out and you want that hamburger and you eat it, instead of feeling guilty and shame about it, bless it up. I tell people, like, no matter what it is, use it in a way that you feel good about it, because that's going to
Yeah.
create the space for you to let it go so much easier, because there isn't resistance. There's
Yeah.
not static. For some reason in our human experience, the things that we feel like we want for ourselves, we reject so much, or we struggle with, because we're
Yeah.
getting so down on ourselves about the thing that we don't want to do. It's like,
Yeah.
just be fully embodied in it and accept it. And it's helped me a lot with food, because I have gone through it with food, especially during my awakening, like going into grocery stores and seeing that 95% of the stuff in the store is toxic, and trying to figure out how to reprogram how I purchase food, how I eat food, how I prepare it, and all of that. And I've had to do a lot of meditation on it, because it's been such a struggle, because I want the greatest for myself.
Right.
I spend most of my money on food, because I know it's the one thing that's going to create the best outcome for my longevity, and the
Yeah.
amount of inflammation and pain that I feel in my body. And so it's a process of wanting to do better and actually doing it. Right.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, like, don't think you have to change everything all at once. Instead of removing something from the diet, just add in healthy
Yeah.
foods. And those things that you don't want will go out, because you're creating a new relationship.
Yeah.
It's like putting something up on a shelf and going, okay, I still see you, you're there, but I'm going to do this for a little bit and see how it feels. And then
Yeah.
it's like you create this better relationship, because the mind thinks that it has to take on everything and just change everything in life like overnight. And it's
Yeah.
like, no,
That's
we don't
not
have to do
realistic.
that.
It's not
Mm-mm.
reasonable or
No.
kind to ourselves at all.
Yeah. And it
And
creates an unhealthy relationship with ourselves, because we're not meeting that expectation that couldn't be met. So then we're like constantly shaming and guilting ourselves. It's like, no, acceptance brings so much peace, because then
yes.
there isn't the resistance on the other side of the static. Right.
Yeah.
It's like really embracing those timelines. And so that seems to help a lot of people, because it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know I could just be cool with myself and create my own reality. And because we're so inundated with, if you're spiritual, you must be vegan. If you're spiritual, you have to do this. To get to your higher self, you have to do that. And it's like, each
Not a,
person has their own path. And then we get embarrassed by it and don't even want to share it with other people. Like, I saw my friend the other day say that they've announced that they're eating meat again, because they realized how bad soy was for their body,
yeah.
and that they were afraid to share it with their community, because there's so much shaming. And that's what I mean about, even in this enlightened new age spiritual, spectrum that we're all in, is that if you're really going to love unconditionally, you should really look to see what it means to be unconditioned. Because
Yeah.
if you're shaming and guilting someone because they're not agreeing to something that you've subconsciously agreed to, that you might not even be living up to yourself, that's
Yeah.
where the stagnancy and the judgment comes from. And
Yeah.
it's like, the true meaning of holding space with someone is, hey, like, this is you and your path, and I'm here to be neutral, androgynous. I'm not here to judge. And the beautiful
Right.
thing is that just holding that space with someone and allowing them to share their vulnerability, they're echoing it back to themselves as they speak it. So that's
Yeah.
where the downloads come in and the aha moments when you don't even have to say anything, but just hold space,
Yeah.
right? Like
Just
it's
be the
so
example.
powerful.
Be the example in that.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
ooh, I love that. Another bell for that. I have people who approach me and they're like, "I'm so sorry I'm eating this in front of you." And I'm like, "I have a great relationship with food. You don't
Yeah.
have to apologize to me for being you.
Right.
Be you
Exactly.
unapologetically. Whatever that may be, I'm not judging you. You are the only one that can pass judgment on yourself.
That's
I,
right.
I don't have authority to do that."
Right.
And just like you don't have authority to pass judgment on me. Like
Right.
I am the only one that can say this feels good to me or this doesn't, you know? And we all experience things in different spaces. Like there was a time where being, you know, alkaline wasn't necessarily what I was rocking with for a little bit of time, and then I came back into it,
Yeah.
or I've I've relapsed in a lot of those spaces, and I feel like normalizing the conversation of the movement. Like the
Right.
process is gonna have motions. It's in this infinite motion. So why are we so fixated on being one point and
Right.
consuming our identity in that one point? Like people are like, "Oh, you're vegan, you're plant-based, you're alkaline." I said, "I just eat what is healthy and good for me and what my body wants." You know, the alkaline standard is beautiful because it
Yes.
does feel good to my body.
Hmm.
I do enjoy this. But there's even some things on that list that still make me mucusy. And I take
Yes.
note of that and I say, all right, this is something my body doesn't agree with, and that's okay.
Yes.
There's some things on that off that list that agree with me just fine. And
Yeah.
I have to have open conversations with my body and say, how do I feel after consuming this? Or do I get an intuitive nudge
Yes.
before I consume this to say no, or yeah, get that, you know? And so I think if we just stopped fixating and identify creating a whole identity over spiritual people wear all cotton and
Right.
like they don't eat meat and all this. I know plenty of spiritual people who are so tapped in that eat
Right.
plenty of meat.
Yes.
It doesn't, and that's their journey. It doesn't. There needs to be a point where we stop creating this whole identity over it and
Right.
just opening up the conversation, because at, at that point we just become better human beings
Yes.
in that moment. Like we're just being, and that's enough.
Yes. It's amazing how letting go of projecting onto people and just really being an acceptance of whatever someone and ourselves has going on, the
Mm-hmm.
level of clarity and groundedness that the body is able to experience is really beautiful.
Yeah.
Just like doing detoxes and cleansing the parasites and getting rid of the mucus and heavy metals, well, then that creates the space for the consciousness to have a relationship with the body. And that's one of the greatest things that I've noticed on my journey, is that once I was able to get control of the communication, because the parasites and the heavy metals and all of that was causing me to be so triggered, defensive, responsive, and reactive, not responsive, eating
Yes.
things that weren't in my inner authority. I was eating things and my consciousness was going, no, 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 that's not what you should
Yeah.
be having. But I ignored all of that. And
Yeah.
then now I have this beautiful relationship with my intuitiveness, and my body will tell me in a way that I know is not parasitic communication. It's like
Yeah.
it's amazing how we're not taught what this amazing mechanism does on a daily basis. And then once there's more clarity, that relationship goes so much deeper. And hindsight, intuitiveness, the channeling, all of that stuff becomes more amplified because the body is an antenna system of sending and receiving information all the time. We're a conduit. And so
Yeah.
you think about it like as a real satellite. Well, if there's
Mm-hmm.
a malfunction in the chip in the operating system of a satellite, the signal that it's supposed to transmit is going to be staticky and distorted. Well, it's the
Yeah.
same thing as the human body. If, if like people say, Lori, I crave sugar and these bad things all the time, and it's not what I feel like is right for me. And I'm like, well, that's something else telling you to eat those things. So it's about recognizing that communication and going, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
no, I can meditate on that communication, just like in the mind, our self doubt, our lack of self worth. Like we
Yes.
are our worst critics. We beat ourselves up, we doubt ourselves. And all of that is an internal dialogue that is parasitic, also.
Yeah.
So I always say, like, get really dialed in and pay attention to the way that you're talking about yourself and the level of engagement you have with yourself, because it's
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like the true twin flame is our conscious relationship with our physical. That
Yeah.
merges our experience into the higher vibration, because then we're not ignoring our
Yeah.
own microcosm. Like we are individual, like we have our own universe, like multidimensional space. And then I feel like when
Yeah.
we connect in that, we actually connect more with the collective. So we
Yeah.
become more in unison with the all. And that creates such a greater experience. And I know for me, I went from being very toxic in every way to
Yeah.
becoming much more healthier. So I have a lot of experience with that, as I know you do as well. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm the type of person where I don't generally go with the masses. I walk to the rhythm of my own beat. I'm kind of a rebel like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I use that with myself to rebel against myself or whatever that programming is. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that today. Or I'm not going to agree to that. Because you know how it is with the clairaudience too. When
Yeah.
we're hearing spirit and just all of this stuff communicating, it's the same way. It's like, no,
Yeah.
we're not going to do that today. We're not going to have that here. And it's just being empowered to say no.
Yeah.
And that creates so many more yeses. And it's really fascinating just to be empowered in oneself and stop the complaining and continuing to engage in a victim mentality and actually doing something about it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so empowering to love oneself, because the experience as a human is rough on this planet. So if we can create that healthy relationship with ourselves, then the experience starts to become, yeah, it's on another level. Yeah.
It's unbelievable, like how much there were levels of intimacy that I had never explored in that
Right.
place of programming. And then when you get to the agape love, like the unconditional love, like this love will never die. It doesn't have limitations, expectations, notations live here.
Yes.
As I like to say, there's notations that live here. And
Yes.
when you finally get to that point, it's like, wow, I can just accept and love me and allow my natural flow to take in and like really sit in that, really flow in that, really be, and I can challenge, the way that I think without being, or the way that I am without being so hard on myself, but just probe the question, why are you like this? Going back to the ego or the other self, I say like a phrase that like opened me up a few years ago was like having tea time with your demons, but
Yes.
I use that real loosely, like
Yes.
having tea time with my demonstration.
Yes.
um and so like I'm looking at this, I'm sitting it down and I'm saying, what do you need here? Why are you enraged?
Right.
Why are you hurt? Show me the first experience that triggered this. And this brings up memories. This brings up, soul experiences. It brings up so much to the forefront because our ego or our demonstration really was acting out in a way to grab our attention.
Yes.
And it's like when the consciousness meets that, we can start to have some healthy dialogue. We can
Yes.
start to have some healthy shifts and bringing ourselves out of reactive to responding in a space of consciousness, and not just, oh, I'm gonna just do this, or oh,
Rejection.
Yeah, it's not, we're not immediately rejecting the thought, but we're open to it, and we're open to probe these questions. Where did you come from? You know, like when I started actually doing my research material, I was like a month in. I was in the middle of, I was a month and a half in, and I wasn't hearing any doubt about what I saw intuitively for this research project. Like for the months that I was preparing for this is what was crazy. So I'm 15 days into a 30-day water fast, and I'm working with one of my clients in the research project, and I keep hearing this voice, this doesn't work anyway. And I was like, who are you? I was like, I know what I'm doing works.
Right.
I am my biggest testimony. I've healed
Yes.
myself from things that were unimaginable. So I know it works. You can't
Yes.
tell me otherwise.
Yes.
And it was just a bizarre thing that I was, and all I could see was this shadow. And I was like, who is this shadows? I casted it out because I'm mid session, obviously. Like, I don't have, I'm not dealing with you right now.
Right.
But then it kept showing up for like a week in different sessions. And I was like, okay, this is clearly not attached to anybody else. This is something with me. So I'm sitting in meditation and I'm like, higher self, who is this shadow? And the shadow was like, I'm you. And I was like, from where? Where did you come from? Who raised you? Because it wasn't me.
Yeah.
You know. And so I'm just having this dialogue, and then I look over to my spirit team and they're confirming. They're like, yes, this is a version of you. And I'm asking, like, why are you so upset about me doing this work? And this version of me was actually connected to a 14-year-old version of me that was jealous that the way that that 14-year-old version of me wanted to do things didn't work out in that exact projected way. So it was like an old version of me was mad at my success.
Right.
And I was like, that's so irrational. Like, that makes no sense. And it was just because I didn't grow up to be the radio star or like the person that had a big broadcasting show or whatever, the whatever 14-year-old version me wanted, like it wasn't the exact way that things panned out, but I know that I'm exactly where I need to be, right? I know I'm
Right.
exactly where I'm supposed to be. So I had to sit there and hug this version of me and be like,
Yes.
it's okay. You're still me. You can be happy at this success because this success is you. You
Right.
can you can now let go of the expectation that you had for this point of your life and say, I am willing to accept all versions of me, all characteristics, because I'm still the person that you wanted to be, just doing different things with it. And that's still beautiful. Like we're able to integrate these experiences that we've had and move them into a place of love. And that's, every version of me has needed it.
Yes.
All billions of them
Yeah.
have needed it. And so it's so important to think about, how can we have a healthier conversation? How can we have tea time with our
Right.
demonstration?
Right. It's just being open to doing it, and being open to doing it comes from having the knowledge that it can happen, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
for some reason we don't realize that we can have a dialogue with our internal selves and really look at the way that we're projecting. And that's why I do a lot of like inner child work too, because
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's so many different layers of myself that creates these different feelings that come up inside of me. And so
Yeah.
the only way I can do it is to recognize those feelings. So if I feel any resistance
Yeah.
in my field whatsoever, I look at myself and I think, well, why am I so resistant against that person or that idea or
Yeah.
that thing, even someone's love and encouragement? Like oftentimes we think we're open to receive, but we're
Mm-hmm.
not. So when someone else wants to give a compliment or help with money or cook dinner or whatever the situation may be, we'll say, no, that's okay. Or someone gives us a compliment. We're like, oh, no, I'm not. It's like, not only are you rejecting yourself, but you're rejecting that person by not allowing them to give, right?
Yeah.
It's like that's been one of the things that has really opened my mind too, because I was always such a giver and nurturer. But I realized that I had resistance when it came to receiving, because I
Yeah.
was independent and I always had to take care of myself since I was a kid, right? So there's these
Yeah.
layers, these walls of defensiveness. And the most beautiful thing for me is to learn how to be open to let other people do. Because
Yeah.
I love to give, and so do other people. And if there's any resistance, I'm like, well, what is going on with my inner child that it would not want to be in a place of receiving the offerings of the collective in whatever way that is. And
Yes.
and I realized that there doesn't really have to be a reason for anything other than me recognizing the resistance in my field and not allowing myself or anyone else be in a compassionate state with me. And
Yeah.
it's so beautiful, especially when in a partnership with someone, that when you've rejected and rejected and rejected, and the person's just like given up, they're like, they don't even want to talk to you anymore because you're not open to receive. To be able to humble oneself and tell that inner child, look, we're going to start nurturing you so that you can get the love that you didn't have as a child, and let other people express the love that they maybe didn't receive as a child, because innately it doesn't leave us. I feel like the
Yeah.
desire to want to be nurtured and petted and given compliments, to feel good, those things should be very natural. So
Yeah.
if there's any resistance, well, that's programming that has been somehow subconsciously agreed upon, to where
Hmm.
for some reason we're rejecting love. And
Yeah.
we do that with ourselves by not being grounded and hold space and just go, hey, like, do what feels good for you. Don't listen to these social constructs. Don't worry
Yeah.
about people judging. People are going to judge no
Yeah.
matter what. So we might as well do what we want for ourselves and be empowered in what we do. So if someone judges us, we don't even have to get triggered. We just go, well, that person is showing me where they are within themselves, but
Yeah.
that doesn't have to become my identity and take it on and then carry that weight around. And that is the
Yeah.
vicious cycle, because when we're kids, we obviously get rejected so much, and then we go to school and there's more rejection, and then we
Yeah.
become an adult and it's just more rejection. And so that's where we get afraid to fully express ourselves with ourselves, much less with other people. So that's why
Yeah.
for me, I'm such a rebel, where I'm like, I might feel judgment or want someone not to judge me, but I break out of that paradigm so fast. And then I'm like, oh, wait, no, I do what I want. And
Right.
I'm the type of person to where I will take you through the dark night of the soul. And that is just the way it is, because I feel vibration, I see frequency, I can pick up body language and to see where someone's at. I'm going to call you
Hmm.
out on your things because I love you. And
Right.
I want you to be empowered in yourself, not because I'm insulting and judging. And I think
Yeah.
that that's where we get relationships so wrong, because we're not open to hearing about ourselves. And
Yeah.
so I've had to deal with a lot of abandonment, because I've
Yeah.
had a lot of people leave my life because of that. And I realized I wasn't speaking in the proper tone to do that. So now that I'm learning how to tell somebody about themselves in a way that isn't compassion, because the last thing I want to do is to hurt someone, but I'm not the type of person that's going to sit by and just
Let you
like
hurt yourself.
be blind, right? Because then it ends up hurting me if I'm not being open and transparent. And
Yeah.
I think transparency is the most beautiful thing that we can learn for ourselves and each other, because then the ego is in a grounded, androgynous, neutral space, to where we're not projecting all of this judgment and shaming each other. Because when we
Mhm.
stop shaming and guilting ourselves, the byproduct is we stop doing it with other people.
Yeah.
And it's the most liberating thing. It's like, oh, I was carrying around all that weight of other people, right? It's like
Now I'm free. You just
now I'm
set yourself
free.
free.
Yeah. And that's where the warrior aspect of being a human comes in, because once you get to that place, and in the society where we lived, it can feel like battle wounds when engaging with other people. It's like, oh, we get hit like with other people's consciousness because they're not in
Yeah.
that same space. So for me, I become more empowered in compassion and
Yeah.
understanding, instead of going, look how that person's acting, they're crazy. It's like, no, they're in pain. They're
Yeah.
hurting from a lack of self-awareness, and that is it. That is
Right.
all that there is. And so it's like, when you get to that place of just really being able to understand the path of consciousness as a human, it's hard to go backwards to where you're like, you have all these conditions with loving people. Um,
Yeah.
and so I just wanted to look really quick too. DJ Harlan commented and said, "Do you think that certain natural drugs help the diseases and the trance music dance therapy?" And I feel absolutely yes. Music is so amazing in how we're able to heal the body. Like sound healing comes through music and so many different hurts. I've been sound tuning for a long time now, and I do vocal sound healing with my clients and myself. And the liberation that comes from free form expression through dance is really,
Yeah.
really powerful. And like natural plant medicine too, natural plant medicine, not just herbs, but mushrooms and cannabis and different things like that have been really amazing in my life, specifically to help me heal and get sober. So it's just a
Yes.
matter of finding something that feels good, because oftentimes we ignore what feels good, our internal desires, those pulls, and because we're distracted with these other things. When I always tell people, follow the excitement. Abundance grows where the excitement flows. Like, get
Yeah.
in that and watch how everything else flourishes. So yes, absolutely. Vibrational frequency helps to heal diseases in the body for sure.
Yes. Yes. I love it. I have the same sentiments on this question, so I'll
Yeah.
let you have it.
Yes.
If
Good stuff.
anybody else is watching and they would have questions for us, I'm Lori. If you're open to take some questions, I'm open too.
Yeah,
Definitely.
definitely.
We have some really great comments from all different platforms. Thank you guys for tuning in to Peace and Blessings, Peace and Blessings. And if y'all have any questions, feel free to ask. I definitely would love to speak on that.
Definitely. I just love creating the space to let others know that it's okay to just be who you are, and create the reality that you want. It's like, for some reason
Hmm.
we don't have the idea that we can do that. And it's so refreshing just to see people go, well, yes, like it's so simple just to change that dial just a little bit, to go,
Hmm.
okay, I can build my own bridges to walk on and I can burn them down when I want. Right?
Yeah.
Like, we use the word hypocrite in our society, and that's part of that dark spell that we put on each other. Because me, I leave myself so open that I know that my DNA is regenerating every second, and that
Yeah.
is going to influence my taste, my likes, my dislikes, what I feel the magnetism towards. So I really have created the space to allow myself to be as open as I can with whatever it is that's going on, because I know that I'm in a light of wanting to heal and health and do good for myself. So anything that comes across my path isn't going to be something that's going to hurt me or hinder me, because I have the inner authority. And that is a beautiful blessing. Michelle said, what moved you to get your chest tattoo? It's beautiful and inspiring. Well, I've been on a journey with this thing. And well, I really identified with Metatron's cube and the sacred geometry, because for me, this is the seal of consciousness. It has all of the elements, and it's the DNA multiplying and continuing to be infinite. And I started with it, and someone didn't do it properly. So, and it was just this inner piece. And then here on Maui, when the pandemic happened and the island shut down, I decided to get into my tattooing. So it became large, and I had to cover up stars. And I'm still working on it. It's not finished yet, but I feel, and I wanted it as close to my heart chakra as I could get, because it's an emblem of my own evolving, expanding, infinite, unconditioned consciousness. And so I love having it on my chest too, because I see so many people look at it and I can see the activation happen. And so it's like, if I'm going to pick something, I want something that's going to really highlight other people. And and I think that's awesome.
Yes, yes. I love your chest tat.
Thank you.
Michelle says it's amazing, perfect placement. It is, it is. And also there's a lot of, I love that you mentioned like putting your tattoos in certain places. And I think
Yes.
for a lot of people, like I have different tattoos and wait, it's over here, you know, different
Yeah.
parts of my body. And before I became consciously aware of, you know, what those spaces meant for me. And now I look at it and it was all divinely planned still. Like I have a passion on one foot and purpose on the other. And I was like, yeah, I always want to be walking with passion and purpose. And
Yes.
that was over 10 years ago. I had no clue that that's what it was going to be, you know, but we have another message that says, yes, this is exactly where I'm at. I definitely struggle with every aspect of what you're explaining. It's really difficult to accept this and take it all in. I'm just listening for now. Understood.
Yes. When working with the consciousness, and there's a lot of programming there, and there's struggle to want to be and feel different than what we're experiencing, it can be difficult at first, and it's only because it's new knowledge. It's only because it's something new that is being, that is coming into the awareness, and it can seem like a lot all at once, but really it's just about letting that heart really open up and putting the mind space in there, and to love. Anytime there's any self-doubt, any resistance in the field, it's just like anything else. We have to practice it. And the more we practice it, the more the DNA goes, okay, I'm listening to this, I'm embodying this, I'm taking it on. And then the consciousness will automatically start doing it. Like, we're so simple. We're such simple beings that we don't even realize we're not complicated. Just like literally telling the body, okay, I'm going to let go of this mind space. I'm going to start loving myself. If you do that enough, the body will automatically start doing it on its own. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in this new awareness somehow. It's just happening automatically. And I play around with my cellular structure like that. I'll think, okay, I'm going to pick up this new tool and I'm going to adapt with it. And one of the things that I like to counsel people on is doing mirror therapy. Like standing in, like sometimes in the past, I have stood in the bathroom or whatever, and I say, I love you, until I have a purge. I break and I start crying and let whatever that resistance is out. And it is so powerful. Just these simple little things that we can do to get it outside of the mind space, whether it's journaling or doing mirror therapy or singing and dancing. I've had purges just from dancing, because you create such a higher frequency that the body purges its own trauma. Like, it's just creating the simplest little things really go so far. And it's a really great relationship, because we have this innate ability to hide from ourselves. So when you come outside of that hiding and you get in the mirror at yourself, look at your body naked in the mirror, and you might project, oh, I look this way, or I don't like this. Immediately go into saying, no, I love you. We are reprogramming this. I love you. I accept you. You are my everything. Yes, honey, that hug, right? Ooh, I get chills just talking about it, and heart palpitations just sharing that, because it's so powerful.
Mm.
It's so unbelievably powerful, and it's so simple to do.
I sit in this hugging notion from my meditations and like yogas a lot. Like,
Yes.
just thank you for showing up for yourself. I love you, each and every cell. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you for all the organs in my body for functioning in my highest good. Thank you for the purging of all parasites of my body. Like when you talk to yourself like that, at first it feels like it's like speaking a foreign language when you're not used to that.
Right.
But
It can
but
feel
then
weird and awkward.
and then you're like judging yourself like this sounds stupid. I
Yeah.
used to be like that. I used to be like that.
Yes.
Like I used to be like that. And then eventually I started writing it and saying it enough to where I really believed it. And I was like, I really love myself. Like I'm
Yes.
really kinder to myself.
Yes.
Wow, I'm patient with myself. Like really the embodiment comes, after you have told your like just reprogramming yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, I went from being utterly dysfunctional with just about every mechanism in my life and have been able to turn it all around. I mean, and I still have low days. I look in the mirror and I get really hard on myself in the way that I look sometimes. And in those moments I go, oh no, I love my lips, I love my eyes, I love my skin, I love my hair, I love my neck, I love my lines. Like I have to go into like remembering the acceptance of myself, because it's like, what is that voice that tells me that I look like I'm aging or I look really tired today? And it's because we're conditioned on this planet to think that we don't age. We're in the age of all these fillers and injections and people morphing themselves into somebody that doesn't look authentic to who they are, and is projected so much at us that there's this subconscious thing that's like, wait, we do age in the body, and we're not meant to look like these smooth, youthful creatures our whole life. Like it's just not part of it. So I've had a lot of struggle with all of that. And I'm like, why am I even struggling with this? Like, why?
Yeah.
Like, it's annoying. Like, I don't want to have to deal with judging myself. And so, what do? I go to the other side of it where it's like, no, honey, you love you. There's nobody judging you but you. Right?
Yeah.
Like, stop it. I have to put my foot down with myself, just like I would with anybody else. Right.
Yeah.
And so, even if I have down days or there's the voice in my head that's doubting my experience, I am so empowered in my own love that I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going through this thing right now. I'm just going to hold space with whatever consciousness that is and tell it that I love it, and they can go to the light, rather than accepting like that dark cloud plague that can come in, because it's transmutation, it's alchemy, rather than walking around and where you've accepted that inner voice that's doubting you, and then you go off and you're telling it to other people. So now you're connecting in the web that frequency from your mind into other people. So you've created a microcosm of doubt with the people that are in your life. And even if they don't doubt you, they have that idea of you in the back of their mind. So it's like penetrating out into the web. And that's the whole thing about complaining. And like, I share how I feel. Like sometimes I'm like, I complain because I'm hurting or whatever, but it's not really complaining. It's just me sharing out loud. But I don't talk down to myself. Like I used to do that all the time. But now when I see other people do it, it hits me energetically, because I know that that's not authentic to who they are, just like it's not authentic to who I am.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That self-love is so strong.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And this one's for you, Lori.
This is, Michelle's wrote, when you clear a timeline, Lori, how does that feel, and what helped you fully believe that is what you were doing? Okay, so I'm not sure if you are referring to like when I shift timelines in my sessions, or just in life in general. And so to clear a timeline is to clear stagnancy. And oftentimes, because Zayne and I, we both do this, our channels are a lot alike. We go in and clear energy in the organs and in the other timelines. And then when I get a signal of changing a timeline, my arms will go back and I run. That's the signal that I get. And so what that means is that we've cleared the stagnancy in the timeline. So when we clear that out, it's literally like time traveling. We're jumping into the timeline that is the most authentic to who you are in that moment, right? And that creates manifestations to start showing up. The synchronicities start showing up. You feel more empowered in your path and the projections of what you feel that you're here to do in this timeline. And a lot of my clients will immediately feel the physical shift when we do change those timelines. And it is such a beautiful thing to witness and have someone come back and say, Lori, all this timeline shifts, I'm starting to witness what is coming from that. And it is absolutely beautiful because, like, I had no idea that there was a such thing as timeline in our human experience, and somehow on this astral formation. And when we go in and clear that out, it's literally upgrading the DNA to be at a higher frequency. So now the DNA is picking up higher frequencies, just like with us, Zane, like having the psychic abilities, the clairaudience, the clairvoyance. I have beings that get on the bed with me at night that work on my body. I have all kinds of crazy experiences, but it's because I'm tuned up and I'm constantly upgrading to these higher vibrations. So we're literally picking up multi-dimensions. And that's what happens when we clear out the body, as we become more in alignment with our authentic self. So that's what that means when we change the timeline.
Yes. I love hearing when people come back and they're like, I am fully invested in myself. Like the whole 180 takes place, and it's beautiful to witness that in people.
It is beautiful to witness it. And she also asked, what helped you fully believe that that is what you're doing? Well, I used to believe, but now I know, because I've had so much experience, and I have a connection with this multidimensional space, this assistance, and I get lots of downloads and have lots of awarenesses. And through working with so many people all over the world, we've been able to experience that over and over again. So through my practice, from believing something could take place to knowing something could take place, has been part of my transition.
Yes. And I think that goes into all of our abilities, like it's the belief, like, I believe I can do this, to I know this is what's taking place. I know what this is taking place, and it's a whole different energy. But the process of the transition in between the belief and the knowing is still necessary, because I definitely went through a lot of back and forth with that.
Me too.
In many different spaces, like, is this even working? Right. What am I doing? I know what to do when I'm in there, but when I walk out, I have no idea what just happened.
Yes.
So being a vessel, sometimes things cannot, sometimes it's not fully like grounded in this physical reality or this physical experience. And then you're like, did that just happen? Am I crazy? Like, and I will live and breathe on this hill that journaling or vocal recording or video recording, things that take place, help us so much with imposter syndrome and like the back and forth of knowing and believing and like doubt, because there's been plenty of, especially with so much experience, it feels like you're jumping timelines at rapid rates, and then you're like, did I even experience that?
Right.
Did I even go through that? Did I literally? There was a point in time where I had, especially at the beginning of my journey, where I did not document anything.
Right.
Or all my documents were misplaced in other spaces where I was not able to recall them. So when I was coming back into my own, like finally grounding myself in this experience, I was like, do I even do the work I say I do?
Right.
Am I who I say I am? I don't know.
Yes.
And I had to really sit with that and be like, no, I did go through these things, and I don't need anybody else to validate that. Like,
No.
I am who I am because I do have so much experience.
Right.
And this is, and so writing things out helps me a lot. I keep lots of journals. I do lots of voice notes, lots of things like that, because it helps me to actualize where I was. And we're changing all the time. I mean, Lori, you was like, I'm upgrading my DNA right now.
Right now.
Me and you will talk tomorrow, and we are not the same people we
Nope.
were right here in this. Like, it 30 minutes after the live, we could be totally different people, and I accept
get downloads and feeling activations, and it's so beautiful to be in that free form space. And like, and also with upgrading the DNA, because we are in a galactic ascension process right now within humanity. I've been experiencing in a fast forward pace since 2016. I started seeing the numbers in 2013. So I've got about almost 10 years of experience with this transition. And what's so amazing is that so much of my childhood is just the memories have gone, because my old consciousness of who I used to be before I got activated is completely different. Like, I'm still solid in my power and my love, but even that has transitioned so much. So it's like being open to change those timelines, and not everyone changes a timeline in every session. Like, it just happens on its own. And usually when it happens, it's when like there's something really like impressive going on in Oregon or something like that, and then boom, we clear that out, and then a timeline changes. So it's such a massive jump to be able to do that, and we can move our own timelines just by paying attention to ourselves. That's what creates and starts the upgrading process, is to realize all the things that don't feel good to us, not needing to know why we do what we do, but just that we want to transition out of that into a different timeline. And it's really, really beautiful.
Yes.
Let's see, we've got some more comments here. Improvisionary 1311. So I just have a strong desire to communicate. Not many people are at this place consciously. You guys are a breath of fresh air. Thank you. Nice confirmation. I'm not crazy. No.
Not crazy at all.
It feels like insanity sometimes when we go through the process of changing our entire format of programming, because we're literally losing the mind, right? We're like letting go of the mind, or rather having a different relationship with it, because we can't let go of the mind. Like, the mind is going to do what it's going to do, and it's how we witness it and engage with it that creates more of a unity, right? Like, that's the twin flame I talked about, is the consciousness recognizing itself to merge together to become one, rather than these separate entities that are floating around. And they also said, yes, I destroy everything. I'm really good at that. I have deep sexual issues that I'm not sure how to address, been hating for a long time. Absolutely. And that's a huge part of what is the distortion of the experience on this planet, is that we're over sexualized in society, but there's also the dogma programming of that it being a sin or not natural. And then because of that distortion, there are people who act out in ways that are not appropriate, right? Like, we get touched or sexually molested as a child. I have dealt with a couple of different situations when I was younger myself. So but I've grown to understand why those things happen. So I don't carry around that sexual trauma, because I understand why everyone is so confused to a degree on this planet. And I actually just filmed a video not that long ago. I have it on my YouTube channel, and I have it on TikTok. I channeled mudras to help clear out sexual energy. And it's a big one that goes really deep, because it's in our lower chakras, which is the foundation of our energetic platform of how we stand. And then it's our creative cycles also, which comes up and affects our throat chakra of how we're expressing ourselves, and how closed off the pineal gland can be to actually be open. So really just getting really dialed in with the sex organs and not rejecting them, but just meditating love over that is a great way to change those sequences of trauma, because we don't have to be in a state of being attached to that. And we can liberate ourselves by accepting what happened, knowing that obviously that trauma happened because that person was in pain themselves. And it's not even about forgiveness, it's just about a sense of understanding the way that we are traumatized on this planet as humans. And it doesn't excuse the behavior, but it creates the space of peace because there's acceptance, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's not giving away our power. It's not empowering the other person. It's just simply clearing out that sequence in the DNA so that it can move to a higher vibration. And it's really that simple. It just takes the practice of allowing that for ourselves, right? Like allowing that for ourselves. And it's really powerful to do that.
Something else too is like everyone has a womb. Like everyone has an energetic womb. And a lot of people think that it's simply women, or like if you have a vagina, like they only associate it with that, but everybody has an energetic womb. Everybody has a sacral. And the trauma, sometimes like the best thing we can do, just like not villainizing our ego, not villainizing everything in our lives. And I'm never going to, I stopped being a victim to my life a long time ago. Stop
ring
being a
that
victim.
bell, ring that bell.
Stop being a victim in my life a long time ago. And I used to be though. And definitely sexual trauma. And Lori, there was a point in my time where I was like, why can't I remember my childhood at all? Right. And Spirit was like, you had a lot of trauma that, you know, if that would have stuck in your brain, you wouldn't have been compassionate at all to people, you know, like, and then when I started unpacking it, because a part of me was afraid, like, what am I going to find? Somebody touching on me? Am I going to be angry? And then when I got there, all I could feel was the pain that this person had went through and how it was transmitted into my body. And when I started to let that go and just have a place of understanding and say, well, I can't change the past. What I can do is be at peace, and choose that peace in my life. And so, and then also to address this is like, you know, with the deep sexual issues, is to be intimate with yourself. You know, like be intimate. No one else is going to satisfy your level of intimacy until you know what your level of intimacy is. And so if you hate everything about your womb space, then you're going to get in an intimate space with someone who also hates everything about their womb space, or it's going to reflect, or you're going to be in that intimate space and all you can think about is how I hate my womb space, you know, or I hate this. And so those things are going to be embedded into this sacred portal of all that you are and all that you can create. And so like the greatest thing you can do is start changing the dialogue around it. Start transmuting that energy. Start speaking to your womb space. What do we need to address? Let's bring it out into the conscious openness and let's go from there. And let me just transmute that. I mean, there's been times in my life, and even when I'm leaping into other spaces with my ancestors and I'm holding them, I'm holding space for them in the moments of trauma energetically. I'm there with them as they are being, you know, in a place of hurt or pain or losing their children or whatever very, you know, sad things are going on. I'm just holding space for them. And I'm saying, thank you for all that you went through. You are not alone. I'm here with you. I love you. You know, thank you for teaching me. Thank you for bringing this to my awareness. You are supported. You are loved, you know, and that love for them is love for me. Because now it's transmuted out of me. It's not in my experience anymore. And so that's how we can address these things, and not just with sexual issues, but any energetic part of our body. We are an entire being, magnetic being full of portals. We are an electric being. So you can address that with anywhere in your body.
Yeah, and I had a visual download as you were talking of an exercise that can be utilized. Sorry, let me adjust myself. An exercise that can be utilized to heal sexual trauma, and it's so simple. So what I saw is that you can stand in front of a mirror or in a room by yourself and be naked, and put one hand over your heart and use the other hand and cup the genitalia and just love, 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 and breathe into that space and just really allow whatever blocks are there to be released. And I saw someone, whoever it is on this platform that might read this or see this, I saw just all this crying and purging. And that's how the body releases stagnant energy, is through laughter and crying. Those are two of the main ways. And so just really hand over the heart, hand down over the in between the legs there, and just speak so much love and so much acceptance and healing over those channels. And it's just those really small little simple things that we can do to self-nurture. It doesn't mean it's sexual or anything like that, but it's just literally laying hands on yourself to say, hey, we're okay. We're not in that trauma anymore. It's just a memory that's being stored in my body. And I'm transmuting that and allowing myself the space to let that go in this moment. And that, ooh, I just got like chills all over my body. Just little small acts of self-nurturing is so empowering, because it's the consciousness surrendering into the body. And it's letting all the source and guides and everything else to turn into a higher frequency, to come in and to help self-nurture that space. Because whether you have the awareness or not, there are guides and beings that are around you all the time. And they're here to help you and to self-nurture you. And for some reason, when we start to self-nurture, they start to nurture us more. So I tell people, like, connect to your third eye and send it out and let your ancestors and your guides know, I know you're there. I'm ready to engage. I'm ready to heal. I'm surrendering and I'm asking for help. I'm open to receive. And that has been so empowering for myself. I did that back in 2016 when my pineal gland popped open. And I remember I just surrendered and cried. And I said, please help me. I'm asking for help. And then boom, I was able to get it to open up. And so it literally just takes a small amount of awareness to create that spectrum of communication. And then everything starts to change after that. And I feel like if there's any type of resistance or trauma that we feel, or like saying, oh, I'm good at destroying everything, well, use that power to destroy the negative thoughts and communication, and like destroy it, burn those bridges down. I'm always saying I'm the one, I'll light the fire and burn it down in a second. Like, that's just my empowerment. And then so it's like we have that ability to destroy, but let's destroy the things that aren't feeling in resonance with who we are. And then we start to become an alchemist rather than an anarchist or whatever. So it really starts to change things.
Throw me in the fire, baby. I am renewed.
Throw me in the fire.
I just was having that talk with my spirit the other day. I was like, throw me in the fire. I feel like it's coming.
I'm ready.
Hey, burn me up. I'm like, burn me up. I'm ready. Yes. I'm ready for renewal in my life. You know, like, just as I can burn the toxicity, I can bring forth renewal. And
absolutely, it's rebirth, baby. It's all about the rebirth, and I love it. Like, I used to be scared of it, thinking I was going crazy, but I kept following the path of what innately felt good to me, and I was able to reach, and I'm still doing it. I'm able to reach these higher levels of my emotional intelligence to really pull in my multidimensional consciousness, my higher self, which is really guiding me, so that my lower level realm of humanism can rise up to meet that, and then together we can become exalted and keep reaching these like beautiful levels of being compassionate to ourselves and other people, because if this world needs anything else, it's that. It's for you to love yourself, because that creates the space for you to share that light with other people. And that's the way we do it.
Yes, love yourself. That's the biggest message right there. Love on yourself. Give me that goodness. Lori, I love all of our conversations.
I love it.
I just love you so much.
I love you so much.
Beautiful. And thank you to everybody that's been watching and listening and sharing and just asking questions. Thank you guys.
Yes.
So beautiful.
And letting each other know that it's okay to be vulnerable and to get empowered and using our voice, even if it's just to look at ourselves in the mirror and to really like just come outside of this heaviness that is draped over us, and to really just like let it go. And also, I just want to say, like, I encourage you guys to check out my YouTube channel and Zayne also, because we have some of our live healing events posted there, and you can go in that space and see the beauty of how we channel with each other, and to really like do these deep clearing sessions. And the love in the groups that we have when we do these events is so amazing, and everyone leaves on a whole nother level. And we're gonna get together soon and discuss when our next event will be, and you can either come in and let us channel with you, or you can just come in and hold space and be a witness and to share your energy with everybody, because it's so beautiful and so moving. And I mean, we move mountains in there.
Yes. Lori, please tell them how else they can support you, book sessions with you, and we'll just go from there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So my email is abundanceislife33@gmail.com. That's abundance with a C on the end, not a T. Abundanceislife33@gmail.com. Or you can message me on my Facebook page through Messenger. And my sessions are super powerful, just like Zayne's. And we just get into a vulnerable state where we get into the mind and the body and recalibrate. I mean, we activate dormant gifts that people don't even know that they have. I mean, it's just full spectrum for each person. And even if you don't want to connect in session, hop on and get in the community that we have here, because we're all about encouraging and empowering each other, and to let each other know that we're not alone in this journey, right? We're actually tribal beings, and we've moved outside of that in our society. And I'm all about bringing the tribe together so that we feel like we don't have to do it on our own, because we don't. So good.
So good to be family.
Yes. Right? Because we're often rejected from our biological families, and then it puts us into alignment with our tribe here. And it's just really magnificent. And I love you guys, everyone, so much for following the path of what feels good to you inside, even if it feels a little scary and maybe not as confident, but continuing to push through those feelings to get to where the excitement is. And that's what I love to empower people in. So I send out so much love, and I speak so much love over everyone's path and your experience of what you're going through, and just know that you're not alone. We all have distortion and wounds and things like that we're tapping into to create a better environment so that we can share love authentically.
Yes. Thank you. So everybody, please support Lori and all that she does and everything that she is. Thank you, Lori, for always being present with me and sharing sacred space. And if you guys would like to book with me, get a sound healing, I have those available on my site, souldropglobal.com. I'll be posting that around as well. Like she said, get into those pre-recorded sessions that we had. You'll be amazed at what resonates with you, even recorded in a totally different, time is an illusion, So you'll recognize how connected we are in this collective, and just by those sessions alone, I know you'll feel it.
And you're so amazing, Zayne. Like, I'm so grateful that you're part of my path, and You uplift me so much by all the love that you effortlessly, I can't even talk. You got me all tongue-tied. You're so effortless in your expression of love and compassion that it's so authentic. There's nothing fake about you. And I just love you and the platform that you create for people. You're so sacred and so divine and so full of source love. I'm just always in awe of you. So definitely check Zayne out, her website, and give her a ring because she has some amazing stuff. I don't work with very many channels, but I sure do love my sessions with you. So good.
I'm just, I am in receipt. I am in receipt. Everything you see in me is you. I want you to know that.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
I know. That's you,
right?
baby. That's you.
We know our divineness.
It has been such an honor, such a pleasure, and thank you all for everybody that came through. And
Love
I love you,
you.
Lori. We'll be
Aloha,
talking soon.
everybody.